This is Women's Leadership Success, and today I have the great pleasure of talking to Shawn Andrews. And Shawn, welcome. And would you just say a little bit about your background, what it is you do?
Sure. So for the last, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 22 years, a variety of roles, sales, training, marketing, medical roles. But for the last 10, so I actually left pharma in 2014 as a result of a layoff and downsizing or acquisition. And that actually started me on a new path. And it was the little nudge I needed to start my own business. So for the last 10 years, I've worked as a speaker, like a keynote speaker. I speak to a lot of women's groups, but also just a lot of organizations in general on the topics of DEI, bias, emotional intelligence, leadership, and gender. So speaking is my main business, but then I also do some consulting on DEI to different companies. I'm a professor, so I teach at UC Irvine, and I teach both a women in leadership course as well as a diversity and inclusion at work course. And then I wrote a book in 2018 on essentially leadership and gender and emotional intelligence. So I wear a lot of hats, but that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years, but it's all been focused on those core topics.
And your book was excellent, and you've been on our show before, and you sent out a really good article. And if it's okay with you, I'll post the article so people can download it when they listen to the show, because the article is really, really great.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk to you about what the heck is DEI. And you said, I'm going to read this. It said, if you've been paying attention to politics or mildly conscious, then you likely heard the comments directed at Kamala Harris and other women calling them DEI hires. And you say Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee and Representative Harriet Hagerman of Wyoming both referred to Kamala as a DEI hire, and other people have talked about Kimberly Cheadle. Is that her name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was the secret head of Secret Service, and she got a lot of heat because of the assassination attempt on Trump. And so, but as part of that investigation of her, she was referred to as a DEI hire, referring to her being a woman. And so it was meant to be a derogatory term for her.
And I just am so aware of so many code words that are going out about not just political, but in the workplace. And I want to just see if we can clarify it a little bit, because I think we get caught up not realizing we're even participating in something that actually is not a very good idea. So let's just start with DEI, but I have a couple of other questions I want to ask you. So what the heck is it?
A DEI or a DEI hire?
I'm sorry, DEI hire.
Yeah. So I'm assuming your audience is, no, DEI refers to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's, the generally accepted acronym. Sometimes you see diversity, DEI-B, which is belonging, or an A with meaning accessibility, but DEI, for the most part, is the most common term. So I'll be throwing that around a lot today during our discussion. So DEI is a broad umbrella, right, for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But when someone refers to someone else as a DEI hire, it's meant to be a derogatory comment. So, for example, and this is common not only in politics as we're living and seeing right now, but it's been common in the workplace for about 10 years. So when someone refers to someone else as a DEI hire, it generally refers to their gender or their race, meaning that, oh, you must be the new DEI hire. So what that means is that you're inferring that that person was only hired because of perhaps a DEI goal or a quota or some type of DEI process that's being emphasized. And so they were only hired because of their qualities to check the DEI box. And it's derogatory because it completely minimizes and undervalues what that individual brings to the table. So a person could have decades of experience and leadership and skills and knowledge in an industry, but by saying, "Oh, are you the latest DEI hire?" Then you're discrediting all of that, and you're only focusing on basic characteristics of race or gender in that person. And so it's a very derogatory and insulting term, and it's never used to be a compliment when it's used. And so I did write in the article, make no mistake about it. When someone uses the term, calling someone else a DEI hire, it's meant to be a put down, and it's meant to imply that they could have not gotten the job based on any other qualification or merits, just based on their qualities as perhaps a diverse individual.
Well, is there some truth to that? In other words, if the person was hired for DEI reasons, is there some truth to maybe they're not qualified? What's your experience with that?
Maybe 10, 15 years ago, that may have been the case, where if a company was really, let's say they really had a problem with DEI in their company. Let's say they weren't very diverse at all. And maybe they have a predominantly, white male workforce, like a lot of tech companies, for example. Mm-hmm. So I would say it was more of an issue decades ago because they realized they had a problem. They maybe started looking for more diverse candidates in their hiring, and they'll hire the diverse person. And the first criteria is that they didn't match their dominant workforce. They were different than their dominant workforce. Here's an example for you. Majority of our tech companies still today are largely Caucasian and Asian males. So you go Google, Facebook, Apple. Well, there's dozens of them actually, but our major ones are still that's still the dominant workforce is Asian, Caucasian male. So if you're a Black female engineer applying for a job at Google, you're not going to match the dominant workforce. And so often comments that she may receive is, "Oh, well, you must be the DEI hire. You only got this job because you're a Black female engineer." Same goes with any other example, a Latina or an Asian woman trying to get promoted to a leadership role. Mm-hmm. We generally don't see, a large percentage of Latinas and Asians in leadership. So it's meant to discredit individuals. It's meant to be a slur. It's meant to be derogatory. So to answer your question, so in the past, I think if a company was looking only at that criteria, we just want someone diverse to check a box, it is possible that sometimes people are hired when perhaps they didn't have all the qualifications. But in the vast majority of cases, that is not the case today. And the reason I say that is because there are so many qualified people in the job market and in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And for the last 10 years or so, the job market's gotten completely saturated with high quality, highly educated, highly skilled workers of all types. So these days, it would be very rare for a company to hire someone who is diverse, who maybe doesn't match their dominant workforce, that does not have the minimum skills to meet that job requirement. That would be very rare nowadays.
Okay, so what's a comeback? If I'm talking to somebody and they say, "Hey, Janice is a DEI hire," how do I help correct that? And I'm asking you this because before we got on the call, I started just researching a lot of microaggressions, different things, code words that people use. And what I realize is I don't normally stand up and say something back. Even having this podcast right now, it's not a normal podcast I would have. And I want to stand up more and be braver and say something.
Mm-hmm.
So what would I say if somebody says that to me? What's a question I can ask? Not, I don't want to be aggressive, but I want them to think about what they're saying. So what's something I could say to somebody?
Yeah, one of the best, and I've actually been asked this recently by others too, is how do you diplomatically call it out, right? What do you say? And one of the best things is simply to clarify, well, what do you, so let's say the person who said it is, I don't know, Henry. Henry, what do you mean by that comment? So ask for clarification. And by doing that, you're not being offensive, but
Right.
two, showing curiosity about truly learning about where they're coming from with this.
Right.
And so allow them time to clarify that. So if they say, if it's in the case of a DEI hire, right, which is generally a derogatory term, and you say, well, what do you mean by that? They're not going to have a lot of backup to give you. They're not going to have a lot of explanation to give you for that. And there's one thing that works really well when it comes to microaggressions, and it's focusing on the impact versus the intention. So by asking someone to clarify what they mean by that comment, you're not only asking them to justify where they're coming from and why they're saying it, but you're putting the focus on that person, the target person. So when it comes to microaggressions, the impact it has on that person, or the perception of that person even, is more important than the intention. So if Henry says, oh, well, I didn't mean anything by it. But most people are not going to recognize or even own up to their own biases. So they're going to say, oh, I didn't mean anything by it, or I was only joking, or something like that. But by pointing out the impact it had on the person, that helps them to see the harm that it has. So it not only it affects the candidate, their own perceptions of themselves, their own confidence, their own self-esteem, but also how others perceive that candidate. So it actually has a ripple effect. When people say comments like that, are you the DEI hire? So whatever Henry intended. So most people are going to say, well, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean it to be a slur. I didn't mean it to be anything bad. That's not what's important. So redirect that person back to the impact it has and how it made her feel, and how it could even change perceptions of people around her. So focus on impact versus intention. And then two, ask them to clarify what they mean by it, because then you're inviting conversation and you're able to dialogue about it. And that's where you
me
get
an
to
example, Shawn, of how would I say something about the impact? What would be something that I would say about that?
Well, you could say, well, do you realize how a comment like that could make her feel? So let's say her name is Jane. Okay. So, Henry, are you aware of how that could make her feel? Or it actually could impact her getting the job. So let's say go back to the engineer example. Let's say she's applying for that job and you make the comment, oh, well, you must be the DEI hire. That could actually, if other people hear that, so Henry or Henry's other interviewers or Henry's team, that can affect her getting the job. So it impacts the target person in multiple ways. So I think just simply pointing out the impact it has on that person, it's like, have you thought about, or were you aware of the impact it has on Jane? Perhaps she may not get the job. It could affect her confidence in applying for another role. It could affect how others perceive her.
Yeah. Recently I had somebody say to me that a woman had sexual encounters that helped her get to the top. Now, I don't ever remember hearing that said about a man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure men are, since it would take two to tango, there's as many men that have done that as women. But so that same thing, you would do that same thing. Like, what do you mean by that? And are you thinking that you're discounting all the things, all the degrees, all the courses she's taken, all the patents she has, whatever the thing is?
Yeah, it's very much in the same vein. It's actually a great example you bring up, Sabrina. It's in the same vein as the DEI hire. It's meant to say that this person could not have gotten this job by any other way except by sleeping her way to the top. It's derogatory, it's a slur, it's insulting. And DEI hire is just the same.
Are there other code words or microaggressions that you can think of that we might just put up with and are not aware that it's insulting and is affecting people?
Oh yeah, I have several of them actually. Actually,
I asked the right person.
You did. Let me pull up. I'll do this while we're talking, but
okay.
I have a slide actually that I created. It's several different types of microaggressions and examples of what those are. So let me just pull that up, and I'll give you a few that are very common, and they've been around for decades, and we often hear them and we don't think about, going back to the impact versus intention, we don't think about the impact it has on the target person. So there are microaggressions regarding race. There are gender microaggressions. Here we are. And there are even nonverbal microaggressions. So I'll give you an example for Black people, Black employees.
Yeah.
When I see you, I don't see color. Okay. Oh. So that seems like a pretty innocent, right? Very innocuous comment. Okay. But so that's an example, but think of the message it's sending or the impact. The message it sends when you hear that is the person doesn't acknowledge your Blackness or won't hold it against you. And here's another one.
Sorry, just go ahead.
Here, and this is all for Black employees. You are so articulate. Now, you may mean for it to be a compliment, but again, intention is not the important part.
Right.
The message it sends is by saying you are so articulate, is that Black people are not usually capable of competent intellectual conversation. That's the message that they receive. So again, impact supersedes intention. Here's a couple for, here's one for LGBTQ that's been around for at least probably 20 years. That's so gay. Okay, it's a common phrase. You probably heard it, right? Oh, that's so gay. When someone says that's so gay, what they're meaning is that's so dumb or stupid, whatever it is they're referring to. That's so gay. But the message it sends is that you are equating gay people with being dumb or stupid. So that's the impact. Here's another one. Were you born in the United States? So maybe you say this to someone who's Hispanic. And by asking that, the message it sends is that they may be an illegal immigrant or not a quote true American. So as you can see, some of these are common phrases. They've been around, but we often don't think of the impact. But they have they could have very negative downstream impacts. Regarding gender, okay, we've talked about DEI hire. Here's another one. Men and women have equal opportunities for achievement. So by saying that, the message that it sends for someone maybe trying to advance is the playing field is even. So if women can't make it, the problem is with them. So you could see the message, right? So the intention, maybe the intention by saying we all have equal opportunities wasn't meant to be derogatory, but that's how it's received. I'll just give you a couple more. One regarding what I call the myth of meritocracy. So believing that the most qualified person always gets the job, right? So maybe the microaggression is everyone can succeed in society if they work hard enough. Well, the message that it sends to people of color is that disparate outcomes in people of color result from laziness. So by saying everyone can succeed if they work hard enough, you're inferring that they're not hard workers, that they haven't put in their time. And then finally, there are also nonverbal microaggressions. So maybe someone is not invited to the team meeting or on the project team. Maybe they're left off an email list. Maybe when you're talking to them, you're not giving them eye contact, you're looking away, maybe you're crossing your arms, or even checking your watch, which is a completely blatant negative, signal. But the message these all send is you're not part of the in-group. Or I don't care about what you have to say, or your ideas are not valuable, or you're not needed or important. So there's very serious messages that these comments and these microaggressions, convey to people. So this is why we need to really think about, have you used some of these microaggressions? Think about the impact it has on others. And remember that these have always been there, but now we know better. And now we could choose not to use them or choose other words when we're speaking with others.
So what are the consequences of this kind of behavior in terms of what are the financial consequences? What are the consequences to our culture when this type of thing continues?
I think the obvious consequence is it's discouraging to people who are trying to make inroads into, their desired industries or jobs or politics even. It undermines people who's worked hard their entire lives to get experience and education. It undermines their opportunities, their chances. It completely works against DEI principles, which is the whole point of DEI is to create equal opportunities for everybody, because we do not live in a meritocracy. Even though skills and talents are evenly distributed, opportunities are not. And so, so we have a lot of talented people out there who don't get the same opportunities as others. And so it works against diversity in our workplaces. It works against equity. It works against inclusion and belonging. So I think in the end, and then talking from a financial perspective, is companies, and we have lots of data that show that companies that are more diverse and inclusive outperform those that are not on a whole host of financial measures, from innovation and ideas to employee engagement, to higher retention rates, to more return on investment, return on equity. So there's a number of measures that for companies that are more diverse and inclusive, and even companies that have more women on their boards, there's even data to show that those companies are more successful than less diverse companies. So there's serious issues, serious financial implications to these types of comments, because it works against DEI.
Yeah, and I started looking up things right before our call, and the Citibank did a study in 2020 where they said they figure it costs over $1 trillion a year in lost benefits, lost opportunities, and all the things that it does. So it really does have a huge financial cost. It has a huge cost just in terms of how we treat each other and are really building a better world. I mean, this is not a United States problem. This is a world problem. Brazil, France, all the different countries that this is happening in. It's just a really big problem. And we all have to begin to change this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Chinese say, how do you build a mountain? One stone at a time. So we each need to do something to make this shift happen. And I would like to invite everybody listening to our conversation to just be on the alert for one time that they can smile and ask somebody what they mean, or they can support someone of color or of another religion or a different sexual orientation, that we could support and encourage those people so that we can begin to make this a better world. And Shawn, do you have anything that you would like to say about that?
Yes, yeah, and that's well said, Sabrina. In the article I wrote, I included 4 strategies to minimize biases and microaggressions, because microaggressions are simply biased statements. And as I mentioned to you, many of them sound, pretty, pretty harmless, but that's not the case. It's the message. It really sends the underlying message. Mm-hmm. So 4 suggestions I made is, if you hear of these microaggressions or bias statements, or if you use them yourself, ask yourself if they're consistent with your personal values. A lot of times we find ourselves, maybe saying things to go along with the crowd, and that's really not who we are. Perhaps we weren't thinking, or we just said something off the cuff, or we were pressured. We felt in a pressured situation, and we may say something that's really not who we are. So by questioning, the things you say, it allows you to interrupt that unconscious bias and allow it to become conscious. And once it's conscious, then we can address it. So first is ask yourself if these biases are consistent with the person you want to be in your personal values. The second suggestion is to actively call out bias when you see it. So don't just sit back and hear these types of don't hear these microaggressions and just don't say anything. Speak up, because if you're thinking it and hearing it, chances are other people are thinking the same thing you are. So call it out, ask for clarification, ask them what they mean by that, and focus on the impact versus intention. The third suggestion is practicing empathy, active listening, and humility. Why that's so important is because if we are truly trying to understand another's perspective, if we're truly listening and even being humble, it's really hard to lob microaggressions at someone else. Mm-hmm. We're truly trying to understand their perspective. Mm-hmm. So empathy, active listening, humility helps. The fourth thing that's really important is something I call the familiarity, trust, opportunity relationship. Now, people, when we get to know someone, we become familiar with them, right? When we become familiar with them, we begin to trust them. When we trust people, that's when we want to help them and give them opportunities. So maybe, and I have a coworker that I've gotten to know, I like them, and I know someone in another department that actually could help, give them a job that they're interested in, or I could introduce them to someone. So I can make a recommendation or make a referral, or introduce them to someone. So there's a number of things we can do, but it's all based on that familiarity, trust, opportunity relationship. So it's really important, get to know people who are different than you, that do not look like you, because we have different lived experiences. And if you're surrounding yourself only by people who look like you, it's not going to occur to anybody to to think differently because you're all like-minded. Likely you're all like-minded. So by seeking out people who are different, you learn about different life experiences, different perspectives. Then you build that familiarity, you build that trust, and then opportunity often follows. So those would be my 4 suggestions to help minimize bias and address these microaggressions.
Wow, it's so inspiring. Shawn, if someone wants to get a hold of you, to have you speak somewhere, or how would they reach you?
Yeah. There's a couple ways. One is my website. It's drshawnandrews.com. Dr, no period, just Dr, Dr. Shawn, SHAWN, Andrews.com.
Okay.
They can reach me there. They can also, there's tons of, you can look at videos and my speaking topics and things like that. But the other way is I'll give you my email address, which you could share. And it's Shawn at drshawnandrews.com. And then I'm happy to, talk to you about, needs that you may have, what your company might be interested in, or, speaking interests that you would have. And we could talk about that. So yeah, my website, my emails, the best way. I also have a TED Talk out there that actually go along with this topic we're talking about, Sabrina.
Great. What is the topic of that? What's the title of that one?
Yes. So I did it last year. It was TEDx UC Irvine. And the topic is debunking bias, perceptions of male and female leaders.
So, wow. Boy, did I ever call the right person. You're famous. That's great.
Yeah. So actually, if they just you can go to YouTube. TEDx has a YouTube channel. Just put in my name, or just put in my name is probably easiest, and the TED will pop up.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being with us today. I so appreciate it.
You're welcome. And, thank you you asked great questions. And I think you're spot on with, these are called microaggressions, but they really have a macro impact on individuals, the company, and even the world. And you're right. This is not a US centric problem. This is a global problem. So
that just gave me goosebumps. Microaggressions cause macro problems. Whoa.
Have macro impact.
Macro impact. That is so true. Okay, well, bye for now. And thank you so much, Shawn.
Okay. Thanks, Sabrina.